Hey guys, Lex here, your resident Shield Warrior main, and today I just want to give you my thoughts on the 0.5.5 reveal stream that was shown recently, but also just what plans I have for 1.0 at this point, and just how swords are looking in the game, because I was overall very impressed. Also, the Chaos Trial rework, I legitimately laughed because, I mean, the changes are awesome across the board, don't get me wrong, but it was funny to me specifically because I made a video criticizing the Trial of Chaos a while back, and I think they may have actually addressed every single criticism I made in that video, so bravo GGG. There are a few things that stood out to me as being a little less hype, but man, again, from what they showed off, the swords overall look so sick, especially some of the sword and boar stuff that they showed off. I just love the ability to inflict parry aggressively without having to actually parry an attack. That was really cool. But yeah, I just want to talk about what they announced recently, what stood out to me, at least to my builds and how I play specifically, and a potential concern I have with one of their decisions here. So towards the beginning here, Jonathan says they really wanted to capture the feel of one attack flowing into another with the sword combat, and though I think some of that stuff later does not fit that fantasy, so much of what they display here does, and I think it looks great. There's this whole new stance system where it looks like you can hold down your default attack or a specific skill's hotkey to enter a ready stance and then grant additional bonuses to other skills that benefit from that stance. And there are certain skills you can use that don't break the stance that you use to reposition. They're really going all in with the combo gameplay here, but I'm kind of for it, I think. It looks super cool. We'll see how it feels in practice in 1.0. There's also Blood Stance and Sand Stance, which are in Path of Exile 1 as well, but they aren't like reservation skills, which I think they are in that game. But here it looks like you enter them in various ways with different skills, and Blood Stance seems focused on big surprise, inflicting bleeding on targets or making them stronger on targets, while a lot of Sand Stance stuff they showed off involves these like sand discs that can assist in AoE clearing. Both look really cool, but personally I think I am most interested in Blood Stance and some of those abilities, which has some really interesting clearing potential with the Herald of Blood and Bursting Plague chaining tech that most of us know about. Surprised they didn't show off any of that, but maybe at the risk of making that stuff look too overpowered or something. One part you guys know I loved with the sword and board part of the showcase. At this point, the player equips a Targe and is able to inflict the parry debuff from ready stance with a charge and bash. It looks amazing, honestly, and is something I am 100% going to build around, though I am curious if you are using a tower shield and sword if you are able to shield bash in a similar way from ready stance. Sure, you can't inflict the parry debuff, but you do inflict a guaranteed mini stun, so it could be a really useful interrupt to boss abilities or something like that on command, rather than having to wait to be hit before you bash with that one. Curious to see if that'll work. Later on, they showed off some like buried blade stuff that honestly just kind of looked like some familiar Fisher skills. I was kind of whatever on that. A little too familiar for my taste, but I did like how you could elementally infuse them for bonuses and the stance bonuses and all that. I think it looked great, but just that gameplay style isn't really what I'm looking for, I think, in my builds. Seemed fun enough though, not necessarily a bad thing, more of a preference thing. They also displayed this boss fight, which I thought was hilarious, as I don't know if it was just me, but the damage seemed very low. Maybe I've just been playing this game too long, or I think maybe they wanted to show off the boss's moveset more than the damage they could do, but it did strike me as kind of funny that there were all of these epic animations and barely any damage being dealt. However, the endgame builds they showed off did do some damage, and I really liked them both. Again, even though the first one with the buried blades may not be my cup of tea, it just seemed really cool and really effective, honestly. There was some good damage showed off there and good AoE clear, but I gotta say the Cyclone build was more my speed. I used to play a lot of Whirlwind Barbarian back in my Diablo days, so seeing this build and how strong it was great. I know it's all built around a unique sword, so we'll see how easy that is to get, but as Mark was going over how it all worked, the first thing I thought of was its potential synergy with Smith of Katava. I mean, it's really easy to get Smith of Katava to 90% elemental resistances, and from the mechanics shown on that unique sword, you take fire damage when spamming its version of Flicker Strike, essentially, which will be a non-factor for Smith because fire damage is kind of the type of damage you want to take anyway. There are even nodes that make us take physical damage as fire that are super useful to that ascendancy, so this may be something that I play around with if I were to break the Shield Warrior mold a bit here. They also showed off a few updated support gems and items, and the two uniques they showed off in this particular build are Zoph's Blood and Molten Tenet. I don't think Molten Tenet is in the game yet, but Zoph's Blood is, and it's currently kind of a mid-amulet, I believe. They already updated this one time, but with this update, it's looking a lot more interesting. It grants a ton of fire resist, big chunk of max life and enemies in your presence have minus 25% fire resistance, but the two new rolls are 20% of non-fire damage taken as fire damage, alongside just granting you avatar fire, which is what I use on my Smith of Katava, so I guess it frees up a passive point there if I were to use this, but the 20% of non-fire damage taken as fire seems really useful, mostly for the physical side of it, since on Smith the other resistances are at 90% anyway, but it does synergize well with the belt they showed off since you recoup fire damage prevented. Very cool stuff, and it fits the theme of a lot of my fire-focused shield builds. So yeah, that build in particular, I'm curious to try on a Smith, perhaps with Fire Spell on hit. Seems like it could be a really fun time. The Forbidden Rites stuff seems fine. I mean, it seems like it'll make campaign playthroughs more fun and challenging, fighting all those bosses and ritual altars and getting access to leveling uniques early on. I'm not really sure, though, that if it's worth the investment time-wise to fight all those bosses over and over again for a shot at like a handful of uniques that are not going to be relevant later in the game anyway. So that part I'm a little hesitant on. They improved the co-op with rituals as well, but you know, overall I'm not particularly interested in it, though I still probably will play through it for the challenges and cosmetic rewards, because, you know, why not? The Wisps thing does seem cool, though. Curious to see how buffing up a bunch of mobs to magic and increasing rarity and making them harder for better loot will work. Seems like it could be a fun way to juice maps with an extra layer of challenge. Alright, the Trial of Chaos changes. So I'm going to once again direct you to my video that I linked in the card earlier in this video, but also down in the description box, because they basically addressed in some way all of my previous gripes about the trial and then some. I think what they've done here looks great. Being able to pause the trial between rooms and resume later, more rooms about killing things and less about escorting things. They made the traversal between rooms shorter, doors open faster, lifts are way more functional, better level scaling, fixing that damn Chimera's boss room, etc. There are so many good, like, mechanical changes here, in addition to some really good changes to the reward and challenge aspect of it. You get more item rarity with higher tier modifiers, wager modifiers that significantly increase danger, but also the rewards granted. No more trash corrupted items, just soul cores and currency. Man, the list goes on, and again, they address so specifically the things I was calling them out on in that old video, so I am really happy to see this. There are also some minor additions to Abyss on the Atlas and Expedition stuff going core. Both of those are fine and good, but there is one aspect of the update that I am a little disappointed about, and everyone's talking about it, so you can probably guess what it is. I know game dev is super complicated and priorities shift all the time. There's no way it's like a linear progression in any sense, but I do feel a little disappointed at the lack of promised balance updates that they said they would that would make up the majority of this patch. I personally am not, you know, all up in arms about it, but I am a little concerned, I guess is how I describe it, because from now until 1.0 is the perfect window to test out these balance changes that they have planned for tons of skills, uniques, etc. Like, now is the time to make sure your game is polished as possible upon release. They could have removed both the ritual and chaos trial stuff for these balance changes, and I'd probably be a little bit happier, though I guess you could argue that the chaos trial changes are part of that 1.0 polish, so I'm going to choose to believe that they have a plan for 1.0 and it will not be a crazy unbalanced mess. It would just be a shame to lose new players because some of those balance changes are, you know, under-tested and are too far in one direction or the other, leading to an unnecessarily frustrating experience. But again, GGG has delivered far more often than not, so let's let them cook, I suppose. I just want the game to make as good a first impression as it can upon 1.0 release. This is similar to the reason I made the whole wording issue video on my channel recently. Anyways, that's about it, guys. My plans for 1.0 are likely going to include a lot of beginner-friendly warrior or melee content, alongside playing around with a sword and board build for sure, updating my Smith of Katava potentially, and perhaps trying a Cyclone build with that new unique. And there might be some streams in the near future, no official schedule yet, as I am currently working out the technical difficulties that my PC had while streaming a little while back, and I think we might be good to go, so keep an eye out for any like surprise streams as I make sure it's, you know, working as intended. So just follow me here or on Twitch until then, but that's going to be it for this one, guys. I'll see you next time.